You probably think the World Cup is just a beautiful game. 22 grown men chasing a ball while an entire planet screams at a TV. Cute, wholesome, a celebration of humanity. Well, you are absolutely, hilariously wrong. The World Cup is the single most corrupt, blood-soaked, fixed, bribed, and downright unhinged sporting event ever created by the human species. And once you see what's been hiding behind the confetti, you will never watch a penalty kick the same way again. To understand just how deep this rabbit hole goes, you have to understand the scale. We're talking about a tournament watched by over 5 billion people. That's more than half of everyone alive. More people watch the final than the moon landing, the royal weddings, and your cousin's terrible wedding speech combined. And where 5 billion eyeballs go, money follows. An ocean of it. The kind of money that makes governments lie, makes referees vanish, and makes entire nations build stadiums in the middle of a desert. So let's start at the beginning, because the very first World Cup was already a disaster. It's 1930, Uruguay. The first World Cup ever. And here's the thing, nobody tells you. Most of Europe didn't even show up. The trip across the Atlantic took weeks by boat, and the big teams basically said, nah, too far, sounds exhausting. Imagine the most important tournament on Earth, and half the invitees ghosted it, like a bad Tinder date. Uruguay won, obviously, because they were one of the 4 teams that actually bothered to cross the ocean. And in the final against Argentina, the 2 teams couldn't even agree on which ball to use. So they played one half with Argentina's ball and one half with Uruguay's ball. I am not making this up. Argentina led at halftime with their ball. Uruguay won with theirs. The most prestigious trophy in sports was basically decided by a playground argument over whose ball it was. But that's just appetizers. Let's talk about 1934, Italy. Hosted by a guy you might have heard of named Benito Mussolini. Yeah, that Mussolini. The fascist dictator decided the World Cup would be the perfect propaganda tool to show the world how superior fascist Italy was, which is already a red flag the size of a stadium. Italy won that World Cup. Shocking, right? Almost like the host country run by a murderous dictator had some help. Referees in that tournament made calls so insane that one Italian player later openly admitted the matches were, let's say, encouraged to go a certain way. Mussolini reportedly had dinner with the referees before key matches. Nothing suspicious about the dictator personally whining and dining the guys with the whistle. Nope, totally normal. Italy then won again in 1938. Because when you've got a fascist regime and a friendly relationship with the officials, why stop at 1? Now fast forward, because the scandals only get spicier. 1966, England. The infamous ghost goal. England versus West Germany in the final. The ball smashes off the crossbar, bounces down near the line, and bounces back out. Did it cross the line? Nobody knows. Not the players, not the fans, not science itself. There was no goal line technology, no replay, nothing. The referee didn't see it. So he turned to the linesman, a Soviet official named Tofik Bahramov, who, and this is the best part, did not speak English, could not have seen it clearly from his angle, and just confidently went, yeah, goal. England won the World Cup off a goal that, to this day, physicists have analyzed and concluded probably didn't go in. An entire nation's greatest sporting achievement might be built on one guy's vibes, but you want real darkness? Buckle up. 1978. Argentina. The country is being run by a brutal military dictatorship that is, at that exact moment, kidnapping, torturing, and murdering thousands of its own citizens. Some estimates say tens of thousands of people disappeared, and the junta decided the World Cup would distract everyone from the whole state-sponsored terror thing. Argentina needed to beat Peru by 4 goals to reach the final. 4 goals, a massive margin. And then, surprise, they won 6-0, 6-0. To this day, there are credible allegations that the match was fixed, that grain shipments and even released political prisoners were part of a deal to make Peru roll over. Argentina won the World Cup while, a few miles from the stadium, their own government was running torture centers. Fans cheered. Confetti fell. It remains one of the darkest things to ever happen under the banner of the beautiful game. And speaking of cheating, let's talk about the single most iconic act of getting away with it in sports history. 1986, Mexico, Argentina versus England. Diego Maradona, a man roughly the size of a fire hydrant, jumps for a header against a goalkeeper a full foot taller than him, and somehow the ball goes in. How? He punched it. With his hand. Clear as day. Everyone saw it except the one person who mattered, the referee. Maradona later called it the hand of God, which is an incredible way of saying, I cheated and it was awesome. And then, 4 minutes later, the same guy dribbled past basically the entire England team to score what's considered the greatest goal of all time. So in one game, he committed the most blatant cheat ever and scored the most beautiful goal ever. The man was a walking contradiction wrapped in a number 10 jersey. Now let's get into the modern era, where the scandals stop being about the games and start being about the suitcases full of cash. Welcome to FIFA, the organization that runs the World Cup. For decades, FIFA was less a sports body and more an organized crime operation that happened to own a trophy. In 2015, the FBI, the actual American FBI, kicked down the doors of a fancy hotel in Switzerland and arrested a pile of top FIFA officials on charges of racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. We're talking over $150 million in bribes over 24 years. These guys were taking kickbacks for marketing rights, TV deals, and, oh yeah, deciding which countries got to host a World Cup. It was so corrupt that the prosecutors basically described it as a mafia. Multiple officials pleaded guilty. The president, Sepp Blatter, got banned from football. The whole thing collapsed like a cheap folding chair. Which brings us to the host city scandals, and oh boy, 2022, Qatar. A tiny desert nation with summer temperatures that can literally cook a human being, with zero football history, somehow won the right to host the world's biggest football tournament. How does a country where it's too hot to play football in summer win the summer tournament? Well, they moved the whole thing to winter, disrupting every football league on earth. And the bidding process, surrounded by so many bribery allegations that several officials connected to the vote were later implicated in corruption cases. Qatar spent an estimated $200 billion. $200 billion. That's not a stadium budget. That's a build a brand new civilization from scratch budget. And the human cost was staggering. Thousands of migrant workers reportedly died building those stadiums under brutal conditions. The most expensive World Cup ever was built on a foundation that many called a humanitarian catastrophe. But it's not always governments and dictators. Sometimes the chaos is just pure, beautiful human stupidity. Let's talk about the 1994 World Cup and Andres Escobar. The Colombian defender accidentally scored an own goal that knocked his country out of the tournament. A mistake. The kind of thing that happens in football. 10 days later, back home in Colombia, he was shot dead in a parking lot. Murdered. Allegedly connected to drug cartels who had bet enormous sums on the match. A man was killed over a soccer game. That's the level of insanity we're operating at. The beautiful game got someone executed for a deflection. And then there's the chaos. That's just chaos. 2006 World Cup final. Zinedine Zidane, French legend, in the final game of his entire career, decides to headbutt an Italian player named Marco Materazzi directly in the chest. On the biggest stage in football. In his last ever match. Apparently Materazzi said something nasty about Zidane's family, and Zidane responded by transforming into a human battering ram. He got a red card, France lost on penalties, and one of the greatest players ever ended his career by getting ejected for assault. It's the sports equivalent of finishing your resume by setting the office on fire. Let's go even further back into the petty stuff. 1982, the disgrace of Gijón, West Germany versus Austria. Both teams figured out that if the game ended 1-0 in Germany's favor, both of them would advance and Algeria would be eliminated. So what did they do? Germany scored early, and then both teams just stopped. They literally walked around the pitch, passing it back and forth for over an hour, refusing to attack, refusing to defend, openly conspiring on live television. The crowd was furious. Fans waved cash at the players. Even the commentators were disgusted. It was so blatant that FIFA changed the rules forever, making the final group games kick off at the same time so teams couldn't collude. An entire rulebook was rewritten because 2 countries got caught being lazy cowards on camera. Want more? In 1990, Cameroon's Roger Milla helped his team to a stunning run, and the whole tournament was marked by some of the most violent tackles ever seen, with Cameroon basically kicking Argentina off the pitch in the opener and still winning. The same tournament had a final so ugly and defensive that it's widely considered one of the worst World Cup finals ever played. The beautiful game was that year mostly just guys getting their ankles obliterated, and the referee scandals never stop. 2002, South Korea and Japan. The host nation South Korea went on a magical run to the semifinals, beating Italy and Spain along the way. Magical, except both of those games were officiated so badly that to this day, people call it one of the most suspicious refereeing performances in World Cup history. Perfectly good Spanish goals were disallowed for no reason anyone can explain. Italian players were sent off on phantom fouls. Were the refs paid off? Were they just spectacularly bad? Nobody's ever fully proven it, but the conspiracy theories have never died, and Italian fans still get a facial twitch when you mention it. So let's zoom out. What have we learned? That the most beloved sporting event on the entire planet has been hosted by fascists, fixed by dictators, sold by criminals, built on bodies, and decided by handballs, ghost goals, and one Soviet linesman's confident shrug. Billions of people gather every 4 years to watch what they think is a pure celebration of athletic glory, and underneath it all is a churning swamp of bribes, blood, and grown men collapsing dramatically every time a breeze touches their shins. And here's the truly insane part. Knowing all of this, every single one of us is going to watch the next one anyway. We're going to scream at our screens, cry over penalty shootouts, and pretend we believe it's all fair. Because deep down, we don't actually want the beautiful game. We want the beautiful chaos. So the next time someone tells you the World Cup is just a simple, wholesome celebration of sport, you can smile, nod, and remember that the whole thing was once decided by a guy who couldn't even agree on which ball to use.